Welcome to the May 3rd edition of the PFF Forecast. We are doing rookie props. We've got some season totals for rookies and offensive and defensive rookie of the year. Props are out, so we're going to discuss those. We've got some picks go around the horn. It's going to be a great podcast, and we're going to celebrate the Lakers. That'll probably be the bulk of the podcast, probably about 90 minutes worth. We'll do 10 minutes football at the end. It's going to be a great show. Let's rock. Arjun, I don't know about you, but I'm in LA right now. I'm traveling. And I partied very hard last night. Had Lakers plus 4.5, plus 160 on the money line. An absolute delight. So I want to get just real quick before we jump in. How confident are you, scale 1 to 10, on Anthony Davis playing 44 minutes day in and day out for the Lakers?
Definitely like a 2. I think like the only reason he played that long was because Lakers were like in the game. I think if Lakers were ever down by like 10 or something, I think Ham will just give up and go on to the next game. But man, that was such a like nerve-wracking game. I mean, when they were down like when Lakers were up 14, I was like, this is still not over. Like, I don't care. Like, I've seen the Warriors make this Kansas City Chiefs comebacks too many times, and sure enough, they tied up the game. And then thankfully, Michigan legend Jordan Poole shot, a 35-footer to pretty much ice the game for the Lakers. So I appreciate my boy Jordan Poole. But yeah, this should be a really fun series. I mean, that game one was incredible to watch.
Series prices now have the Lakers favored, which has me a little worried. But on to football. Brad, apologize for the basketball talk. But if you want to join the Laker bandwagon, come on over.
No need to apologize to the 6'7" guy to talk some b-ball. I'm well versed in the b-ball, but yeah, unfortunately, the healthy AD is just a joy to watch, but he's a rarity, unfortunately, most of the time.
I think so. This is to get it back to football. Remember when we had the conversation about just resting Drew Brees for like 14 games and then bringing him in so that he didn't wear out? I legitimately think the Lakers should consider just giving AD game 2 off. Bring him back for game 3. You still have home court, and then you give him that long break, and then maybe you can get 2 good games out of him. Maybe you can go up 3-1. You give him another game of rest, and then bring him back for a home game 6.
Yeah, you can continue, but the Warriors are not. It's actually smart because the Warriors are not losing game 2, even if AD does play 44 minutes again.
Exactly. They're going to bench Jordan Poole. All right, let's get into it. We've got offensive and defensive rookie of the year awards. We also have some player props with a rookie lean to it. Obviously, there are other season totals that are out there. We're going to focus on rookies today. We'll hit some other ones, as we go through the offseason. We want to start with the rookies because, of course, they are top of mind. There are odds posted. We're looking at DraftKings. DraftKings, I think, has the most robust offering right now. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but that's what I have seen. Let's start with defensive rookie of the year. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of recap probably up to the first, 10 or so players. I'm sure we'll have some long shots in here, but Will Anderson is the favorite at plus 350. Tyree Wilson is 8-1. Jalen Carter, 8-1. Devin Witherspoon is 9-1. The oily hipped legend, Christian Gonzalez, is 10-1. Luke Van Ness and his father are 12-1. Emmanuel Forbes, 14-1. Nolan Smith, 16-1. Will McDonald IV and Miles Murphy, Joey Porter Jr., and Jack Campbell, legend. Felix Anaduki Uzoma, Drew Sanders, Deontay Banks, Brian Branch, not Barch, all 20-1. Let's start with you, Brad. Give us your first favorite.
Yeah, as much as I want to take the oily hipped legend Christian Gonzalez, I won't keep chasing that bet. So you mentioned him there. It's Felix Anudike-Uzomah, and I think the tough part here is it's a narrative bet, as a lot of these rewards are. Obviously, the Chiefs are coming off a Super Bowl win; they're a phenomenal team. But I think the angle here is twofold: is A, their defense wasn't spectacular last year, in particular, but outside of Chris Jones, they got basically no pass rush off the edge, including rookie George Karlaftis. I know he had a good sack totals, but didn't really have consistent pressure. And the thinking here as well is, the Chiefs are going to be playing from ahead a ton, so the game script is going to be favorable for Felix Anudike-Uzomah, where they're going to be going against teams that are passing against them a ton, and maybe he can rack up some sacks, hit up a double-digit sack number. Maybe the defense overall, does better in total yards allowed and total touchdowns allowed, or whatever dumb stats these voters look at when they make the determination. So yeah, but that is my angle there.
Love it. Arjun, what about you?
Yeah, so I really like Will McDonald at 20-1. I think I don't necessarily think he's going to be the best edge from this class. I do think there's a decent chance he actually has the most production year one, which is obviously why I'm making this bet. He's coming into the league a little bit older than some of these other guys like Will Anderson and Tyree Wilson, or Tyree's about the same age as Will McDonald. But Will McDonald, he's going to be 24 year one. He was one of the more athletic players in this draft class, 4.740, 1.63 10-yard split, 11-foot broad jump. Like, he is very, very explosive. You put him on that defensive line with Quinnen Williams, John Franklin Myers, Jermaine Johnson, first round pick from last year. Like, he's going to be able to get these one-on-one matchups because of the gravity of Quinnen Williams and John Franklin Myers. You add in that, Robert Salah, pretty aggressive defensive coordinator, is going to be blitzing a little bit more than the league average. So you're going to be able to have him, on some unblocked sacks and unblocked pressures. I think there's going to be a lot of opportunities for him. One of the things that does drive snaps played is draft pick position, and him being the 15th overall pick, like, that's going to matter in terms of how many snaps he gets and how many pressures he's going to be able to produce, how many sacks he's going to be able to produce. And then the main thing, like Brad said with Felix, like, I think Jets should be playing from ahead most of the season with Rodgers at quarterback. Like, they should be in an explosive offense, a high-powered offense, giving him more opportunities to rush the passer. So I really like him. And, one thing I didn't mention yet, Carl Lawson could be a cap casualty. And if he's off the roster, that's just more snaps for Will McDonald to potentially go and get after the quarterback. So add in the explosiveness, the ability to have a high floor in year one because of how old he is, despite his maybe low ceiling because of his age. I really like this bet at 20-1.
I like both of those. I will say I am a little surprised that Will Anderson is such a heavy, favorite here, or as the lowest odds by a large margin, which gets me to the bet that I like most, which is Nolan Smith. He is 16-1, and here's the reason that I like Nolan Smith a lot. The Eagles are in a position where they should be up quite a bit, so he'll get a ton of pass rush opportunities. He is playing on a great and very talented defensive line with guys on the interior who are going to require a lot of attention. So he's going to get a lot of opportunities in high value positions. You talked about this, I think, a bunch, Arjun, which is like, how do you predict, sacks, right? Obviously, proximity to the quarterback is really important, but so too is just surely the opportunity that the player is going to get, right? If you play more on third down in passing opportunities, you're going to have more sacks. It's just simple math. And the awards bettors are not looking into the context, right? They're just looking at the high level numbers going, I'm betting, I'm going to vote for this guy. So I like that quite a bit. The kicker there is actually something that Brad mentioned, which is, you think about the division that he is playing in. Dak Prescott, very good, does not take a ton of sacks. He's been very good at that. However, you look at the other players, other quarterbacks. Daniel Jones, I'm not so worried about Daniel Jones. Whoever the hell is playing quarterback for the Washington Commanders, whether it be Sam Howell or anybody else, I feel really good about them giving up a bunch of sack opportunities. So I really like Nolan Smith at 16-1. So the offensive rookie of the year odds are as follows, as I make sure that I can remember which teams players are playing on. Not surprisingly, Bijan Robinson 3-1, Bryce Young plus 475, CJ Stroud and Anthony Richardson, along with Jackson Smith and Jigba, are 7-1. Jahmyr Gibbs, Detroit Lion, 9-1. Jordan Addison, 17-1. Zay Flowers, 18-1. Zach Charbonnet and Quentin Johnson. Arjun's Quentin Johnson are 20-1.
Sure.
Will Levis 25-1. Jalen Hyatt 28-1. Josh Downs also 28-1. And we will close out with Hendon Hooker at 30-1. We'll start with you, Brad.
Yeah, so I'm going for an even bigger long shot than the favorites on the board there. There is an inherent risk in this play, so I'm not going to empty the clip right away. And the risk is that maybe the Miami Dolphins still do trade for Dalvin Cook. I know they've had some conversations. Who knows how far along it really is. But Miami took Devin Achane, the Texas A&M running back, in the 3rd round of the draft. I don't think they thought he was going to be there. I know every GM and coach says that at every single press conference, but I actually do think he was expected to go a little bit earlier in this draft. Anyway, the reason why I love this play, he's 35-1. I've actually seen him at 40-1 at some books as well. He's a speedster, ran a 4.32 40. Even before college, he famously ran like a super fast 100-meter dash and all this stuff. He's a track guy that comes to the NFL. And the reason why I love this one is, look, Miami was like a fringe playoff team. Yes, they made it, but not really. They couldn't actually play, a meaningful playoff game. And you get a guy where you can come in. I think if they don't trade for Dalvin Cook, he's going to be the number 1 running back on this team in the first couple of weeks of the season. Yes, they have Raheem Mostert, your guy Jeff Wilson, but I don't think they're going to be the top back for a long time. So the thinking is Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle on the outside, Mike McDaniel scheming things up, all those distractions. He's going to break off a couple highlight 60, 70-yard, super long touchdown runs that stick in voters' minds. I think is just a quintessential long shot bet where, again, you're kind of betting on highlights, betting on narrative. And I think it was the best landing spot, in my opinion, after Bijan Robinson. Like, I don't like where Zach Charbonnet landed. I don't really like where Kendre Miller landed. I don't like all the running backs you look through their landing spots from fantasy standpoint, from a betting standpoint. I think Achane really stands out if they don't add Dalvin Cook.
Yeah.
When you have jealousy, Arjun, of like someone else's bet, and you're like sitting there like, man, so I can't use that one. I'm very jealous of that. Very jealous of that one, Brad.
Yeah, no, that's a great bet. Some more, I think, stats to back that up. Achane, 90th percentile in terms of explosive run rate. That's one of the key predictors of NFL success for NFL running backs. So him, being in the 90th percentile should translate well. I don't think the Dolphins really addressed the offensive line like as much as I thought they would in free agency and in the draft. So kind of running it back, but Mike McDaniel coming from Shanahan's scheme is going to be one of the best at scheming up stuff for his running back. So I like the Achane one, but my favorite has to be Jordan Addison at 17-1. A lot of angles here. Adam Thielen getting cut from the Vikings. Obviously, Addison's in the step in right away as wide receiver 2. Obviously, you want to bet on volume for these kind of, award bets, because that's what's going to drive voter, what's going to influence the voters that much. And so I think Addison will get a ton of looks, ton of targets. I'm sure Justin Jefferson, coming off, one of the best seasons for any receiver in the past couple of years, is going to see a lot of double looks, leaving Addison with single coverage. Another thing to look at, if you look at the Vikings pass rate over expected, so it's based on how much or what like a logistic regression would predict the Vikings probability to pass on every given play. Last season, they passed about 2.5% over expected. So that's something that I'm sure Kevin O'Connell is going to continue from last year to this year. On top of, the Vikings defense is not going to be that good. I mean, you lose Pat Pete in free agency, you lose Chandon Sullivan. Like, this is not going to be that good of a defense. They didn't really, I know they took, I know they signed some guys in free agency, drafted some guys, but like overall, I think they are still not going to be that great of a defense. So assuming Vikings are going to be playing from behind, or at least in a neutral game script, which means they're going to be throwing more. So add that onto Addison coming in, stepping in as the wide receiver 2, having history of having elite production in college. I think there is a lot of avenues for Jordan Addison to be very productive year 1. And I think, the Vikings should be competitive enough to where Addison should get some offensive rookie of the year votes.
Yeah, I like that, especially in contrast to like another guy that's going to be a number 2 receiver, Jackson Smith-Njigba. I think a lot of the thought there is, okay, well, DK Metcalf's going to get all the coverage. Jackson Smith-Njigba is going to get a ton of open looks. And, the Seahawks are not quite as pass heavy a team as the Vikings. And, I think have a worse quarterback, even though, I'm not the biggest Kirk Cousins fan. I think it's fair to say that he's a bit better than Geno. I'm going to go with one that I generally don't think that there's a lot of value in taking players at higher than 10-1 odds, I should say. But I'll give you this one in the way I would phrase it is, don't bet any Colts win totals. If you're thinking about betting the over on the Colts win total, bet Anthony Richardson 7-1 to win Offensive Rookie of the Year. And I think we've talked about this before. Like, he has a super wide range of outcomes, but as you compare the different quarterbacks here, you look at Stroud. I think Stroud's situation is god awful. You look at Bryce Young at plus 475. I think his situation is god awful. I'm not going to bet the favorite in Bijan Robinson. And the Colts are going to need to put Anthony Richardson's natural talents on display. So I think he has the most clear path to both some highlight level plays, as well as some gaudy numbers from a rushing perspective. And then you look at the competition that he's going to be facing, a really, really weak division. So I think the opportunities are there for him to actually win some games, and to do so in kind of impressive fashion. And that is 7-1, even though I am still very jealous of the Devin A-Chain that Brad plays. So I'm obviously gonna bet that as well. All right, let's move to some props. I think we've got a couple that we want to hit. So why don't we just go sort of around the horn here? And Brad, we can start with you. Player prop that pertains to a rookie that you like.
Yeah, so a couple of drop. This one is from DraftKings, and it is the under 8.75 sacks for Will Anderson, excuse me, at minus 120 to the under. So the thinking here, you look back the entire rookie wage scale from 2011 to last year, on average, about one pass rusher per year, rookies get at least 9 sacks. In many years, it's 0. There are a couple of years where it's 2. I didn't see a single year where 3 players had at least 9 sacks in a rookie season. And then when you do look at the players, a guy like Micah Parsons playing for a playoff Cowboys team, the Detroit Lions had the most snaps on defense in the entire NFL last year. So Aiden Hutchinson did get there with, frankly, a ton of cleanup pressures and unblocked pressures, and really not. I mean, again, that is kind of how sacks come about. But nevertheless, Will Anderson is playing for a Houston Texans team who should be in the fourth quarter of most games. Frankly, in the third quarter of most games, teams should be running the ball 80% of the time. I'm being hyperbolic, but I'm probably not. So, again, you are just kind of betting on sacks or not a very strong statistic. Yes, he's a good pass rusher, probably the best pass rusher in this class, but the game script goes against it. On average, like I said, 1 player per class. And yeah, he's the first one taken. But I just think the line is way too high there, for, again, like a guy that's not a special talent either. That's all we heard the entire, draft class. This isn't, a Joey Bosa, a Myles Garrett. Neither of those guys even hit this number, by the way. He's a good player. I just think it's too high at 9.
Yeah, that's a lot, man. I mean, yeah, all the points that you make, but like that team is not going to be good. Arjun, what about you?
Yeah, so one bet that I like, Bijan Robinson over 8.5 rushing touchdowns. Just looking at the Falcons last year, I mean, Cordell Patterson alone had 8 rushing touchdowns only in 13 games. And by the end of the season, he was kind of benched. So when he was given the opportunities, when the Falcons offense, was rolling a little bit early in the year, 8 rushing touchdowns, and then, Tyler Algier over 3. So there's going to be opportunities for the Falcons. Last season, they did rank 14th in red zone touchdown percentage, which it isn't great. It's close to league average, but it's better than I think how their offense was perceived. And I think this year they re-signed Chris Lindstrom, added Matthew Bergeron on the offensive line. Like, it should be a better offensive line all across the board. And then, like I mentioned earlier, like one of the key things that drives volume and snaps played is draft position. And Bijan being drafted at 8, like, you can't tell me they're not going to feed the shit out of him in the red zone, in goal line situations. Like, we drafted you for a reason. Like, you go and score a touchdown here. So I think 8.5. I think it's the right number, but I would take the over. And I think the Falcons offense, everyone's been hyping up, Desmond Ridder breakout second year, Arthur Smith, the genius play caller. I think once they hit the red zone, it's going to be a lot of ground and pound. And to me, it's going to be, the touchdown going to come to Bijan because that's what they drafted him for. And again, we've seen teams kind of, play rookies based on draft position. And I think Bijan kind of falls into that category. So really, really like this bet. And we know Atlanta's going to run the ball a lot. So I think there's a good chance he goes over 8.5.
Yeah, I like that one quite a bit. Here's one that sticks out to me. So looking at the passing yardage props for quarterbacks. CJ Stroud, 36.75.5, minus 115 on both sides. A couple hypotheses here. The first is I think there's a chance CJ Stroud really stinks this year. If there's a narrative around the rookie QBs that I'm like most confident in, I think it's that one. We've talked about this ad nauseum. Had such a good supporting cast in Ohio State. Was a complete disaster when things were not perfect around him. Was a travesty under pressure. And then the fact that the team is also awful. Remember, they traded up. They got rid of draft capital to go trade up to get a defensive player. It's not like they, went up and then got a great receiver or something like that. And then you look at the offense that they're going to want to run there, right? They're bringing over the San Francisco offense. They're going to want to run the ball and protect CJ Stroud as much as possible. So not only do I think his volume will be down, but I think the supporting cast is going to be as a bigger shock to him than any other player. Like Will Levis is going to get in there and be like, oh my God, this is what it's like to play with like real football players. Amazing. Bryce Young's going to be like there. And it's like, wow, my receivers suck, but guess what? They sucked last year. CJ Stroud's going to get in there and go like, can I go back to Ohio State? Can I bring some of the freshmen at Ohio State and recruit them to come run some routes for me here? Because this is tough. And so I think under there, like I could see him honestly like a Zach Wilson type number 2 overall QB kind of situation with CJ Stroud. So not to be a hater on the Texans, who I've already misrepresented as a different team that fleeced them during the draft. But I think it's going to be kind of rough for them. Brad, any others?
Yeah, no, I think you're spot on there. We make the joke a lot, or people make the joke a lot, like, oh, his college team was better than the pro team. Like, no, his receivers were legitimately better at Ohio State than they will be at Houston. Offensive line, probably not, even though 3 of them just got drafted, and I see one of the guards get mocked in the first round for next year, but I won't go too far. The Texans have a good offensive line. But yeah, I totally agree. I like both Bryce Young and CJ Stroud touchdown unders as well. The yards for me, like I agree, like I think the yards are way too high also. But the angle there is more just like, maybe they're down a bunch and they're throwing late in the fourth quarter and they're trying to, come back in games and they get a bunch of garbage yardage. But maybe they don't get any garbage touchdowns. I guess they could. I think Bryce is at 25.5, or maybe it's down to 24.5 now.
22, 22.5.
Yeah, it's way down.
Oh, geez. Okay. Well, it was 24.5 this morning. Well, I guess never mind then.
Yeah,
CJ Stroud is 22.5 minus 150 to the under. And Bryce Young is 22.5 minus 120 to the under.
They moved 3 touchdowns.
Stroud. Yeah, I was looking at Stroud similarly, and I was like, yeah, because I agree. I think the under 22.5 touchdowns for Stroud is really, really good. But minus 150 is a steep price to pay.
Yeah.
How do you like, if you're a sports trader for DraftKings, like and you set that line, and by the end of the day, you're like you have to move it 3 touchdowns and still juice it to the under. I mean, like how, like if you're the manager of that sports trading like group, like how much, like you must feel like pretty like mad or disappointed in your team for setting that line, because obviously it was a bad. Well, it's technically not the closing line, but when you have to move it that quickly, like I think it's probably a signal, right?
I'm sure the limits. Go ahead, George.
I was just gonna say, like, I agree. I mean, a lot of these, few books are truly originating lines. I think for a lot of these player props, it's a little bit more all over the place in terms of, it's not as clear cut of a kind of origination path. And I think most places are doing a combination of in-house and outsourcing, their lines. So like, you think there might be a person that's actually pissed about this. They could just not know who set this line and like blindly kind of putting it out, and then it reacts. And, I'm not sure that's, because their limits are so low. Like if you just have an algorithm that does that, you're probably over time, you'll have some like these that are like bad to start, but you could probably correct quickly enough that you'll be okay. And, then you can raise limits as you see it set. But I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of this is just, quite frankly, algorithmic at this point.
This could be like an Occam's razor, and I'm probably overthinking it. And maybe, George, you obviously have a lot of contacts in that space and smart people that do some of this work. I think we've reached a point where obviously books want exposure on both sides of something. And so oftentimes, I'm not going to call it a trap, but they'll put something out there that they know they're going to get action on a certain side. And then as time goes on, the other side will get bet. And I think like overs for like, excited fans of the team, or just the casual bettor that likes betting overs, stuff like that. A guy that watched Alabama tape or watched, all that. And I think we've just kind of, I know it's early still, we're in the infantile stage of legalized gambling and all that, but I just don't think like you're getting that action as much anymore. And frankly, I think there's more people that see it and hammer the other side before you get a lot of that excited, energetic kind of, square betting.
Yeah, well, the notion that books are like trying to get equal amounts of money on both sides it is a complete farce and banana land, and would be very, very hard to actually do, right? If that was the way that you truly made money, right? So that's not like the goal. The goal is to set the best line possible, and you're charging a tax on it, and you're going to make a certain percentage, and the books are very, very good at knowing what are they expecting to hold from different types of bets. And it's not a secret out there, not that this necessarily correlates, but it's not a secret out there, to your point, Brad, that you can't get people to bet unders. It's very, very hard to get to bet unders. If you want to get flagged as a sharp bettor, the thing that you do is you go in and just bet unders on player props, and they will immediately flag you. So it's like the easiest tell, right? Are you a casual fan? You are betting overs. It's even hard for us. I think people that are pretty discerning on a sports bettor that won't say like, we're, Michael Jordan of sports betting here, but like we bet, it's hard. You're looking at it, you're like, I would rather bet an over than an under, because an under, there's just this intrinsic thing where an under, you can lose the bet before the game ends. An over, there's always a chance.
Always.
Never dead.
It's like it's never dead. So they're just knowing that, knowing that basic premise, you can set lines, artificially higher, to your point, Brad, and people will bet the over still, because that's just the way it is, So yeah, it's very interesting. I mean, I would love to know. It'd be really interesting to see what the underlying, at the end of the day, what their risk is on the different numbers there.
Sure.
Any other player props, Arjun?
No, I mean, there's just not a lot out right now. It's still pretty early in the off season, so don't really have anything else I like.
I have a story for you guys. I bet on baseball for the first time.
Oh no.
Not a baseball guy. Okay? Not a baseball guy. But I want to tell you about because I felt I could commiserate with the average NFL bettor because of this experience. So I'm going to a Dodger game against my will, not a Dodger fan, going to a Dodger game on Monday night. The only way I'm getting through this game is betting on this game.
Yep.
And I can name like Mookie Betts. That's about it on either team. And I think Bryce Harper plays for the Phillies, but he wasn't playing in this game. So I'm like trying to figure out, I'm like Google searching the starting pitchers, because, I do know enough to know that that's important. End up deciding that both starting pitchers kind of suck. So I take the over 8.5, show up to the game, 4th inning or something like that. Over clears in the 5th inning. So celebration all around. And so now I'm a baseball bettor. I've had a little taste. I've done a little bit of research. My research proved true. And now I must be sharp.
Those are famous last words.
One of the funniest like videos I saw in like the past month, there was this like TikTok girl. Her name's like Rossi Betts or something. This got like passed around gambling Twitter. She made a TikTok, and I seriously couldn't tell if she was trolling or she was like being serious. I think she's serious, which kind of scares me. But she's like, the one I've been betting on baseball this entire season, and I've been up like 10, like my ROI is this and that, my units like this and that. It's like the one thing I feel like I'm doing that no one else does is you have to look at the pitcher matchups when you bet on baseball games, because that matters. And I'm like, and everyone just had a field day with it. Because I mean, if you're not looking, like if you don't have a model that factors in like pitching, who's pitching for both sides, like home away stuff, like recent history, like you're not building a good model and stuff. So like that was just like one of the funnier videos I saw, and she was getting flamed for it. So I haven't like checked back in on that video, but yeah, if you're betting on baseball, like I would definitely make sure to know who's pitching, because that definitely matters for betting totals and sides.
I think it arguably is the most influential. Like it probably might arguably matters even more than quarterbacks. I could be wrong on that, but I feel like I'm not necessarily wrong on that. It's like the most impactful single position in any sport you could bet on.
It's become, I guess, slightly less impactful because, you know, they've done these things like openers and,
Sure,
you know, gone are the days where guys would go kind of deeper into games. But yeah, it's such a big deal. I mean, I've always thought that of the major sports, baseball was the one where you could probably build the, you know, the most accurate model. Now the problem is that so can the books, obviously there, but it's just so freaking boring to watch. So, you know, may God have mercy on your soul if you're trying to do that. I do think that like the live betting aspect for baseball is maybe the thing that saves the sport, because like we were sitting there during the game and you're just like bored. I mean, the pitch clock, I gotta be honest with you, it's too slow. They need to cut that thing in half. 15 seconds, 20 seconds when guys are on base is an eternity. But it makes the live betting interesting. And so, like, you know, betting on a bat, betting on an inning, betting on a guy to hit a home run, those kinds of things, like, I think it's got to be the way that you keep people interested in the game.
Yeah, when you started the story with, I was going to a baseball game against my will, I knew I had to do one thing to stay interested. My response to that is to drink about 8 old style tall boys. So, you know, to each their own. So their approach to making a baseball game interesting. But that's my go-to.
I did drink some tequila. I will
Of
I will
course.
confess that. And then I followed it up obviously with the Lakers. So maybe it's just the LA teams. I've just got to continue to double down on that. But yes, I'll be giving out baseball picks going forward. So members of the printing press, you're welcome. That's the plug for joining the PFF printing press Discord, which I probably should have mentioned earlier. Go and get the link that is in the description in the YouTube description, or hit us up on Twitter and we will pass that link to you so you can get involved. We obviously talk about all things that we're kind of hearing there. There are opportunities to bet. If there's news that comes out, Brad and Arjun are on top of it. Also a great community of people who are doing their own research and passing it around. As we mentioned, we got the Moody 75-1 from a member of the printing press. So you'll want to get involved there. And then of course, head to pff.com, get yourself a PFF Plus subscription. I think the Draft 40 promo is still live. So go get involved before it gets taken down. We have a new product on pff.com. It is the post-draft and off-season guide, where just today we included an analytical view of how the off-season went, both draft and free agency, looking at wins above replacement and what kinds of additions or subtractions teams underwent, what the draft looked like. So some really cool stuff there. Obviously, off-season grades for free agency from Brad, draft grades from the team as well, and we've consolidated all of your picks for each team in order with those teams, so you don't have to go trouncing through the whole draft guide to get some information on the new players that are on your team. So go check that out. Get 40% off a PFF Plus annual subscription. We'll be back with you on Sunday night. Thanks so much for hanging out. We love you all. Peace.